don't have enough ports for mic, charger.
You got to use a dongle.
So when you use a dongle, the only like one port will work.
Have you tried it?
Literally every week.
The man who needs no introduction. Whenever I'm with Broc, he knows everyone around. There isn't a sport he doesn't know about. There isn't a person that doesn't know Broc Anthony. And Broc Anthony started his career at Campus Inc. when he was
17 years old.
17 years old. Broc, we'll let you give your own intro first, and then we can have some fun with it.
So my name is Broc Anthony, creative director of NIL and collegiate sales manager on the student designer side. I started Campus Inc. at 17 years old at the University of Illinois, where honestly, Mike said we needed a rush shirt done. I made a rush shirt, and then we got them printed. He brought me to the Campus Inc. shop at the time, brought me upstairs, and Steven was like, who made this? I'm like, I did. He's like, you need a job? I'm like, I can't do it. I'm like playing water polo. I'm pledging a fraternity, working. There's no chance. And he's like, we'll make time for it. And then kind of just start growing from there, one student to 3 students to 4 to almost 200 now. So it's been quite a time.
200 students you manage. You also spend time at Red Bull Creative Agency, right? You spent a little bit of time dialing up people at Yelp. You've been around.
Yeah, I've been around. I've worked at Carol H. Williams Advertising right after college, then Yelp, which is a crazy rigorous job in sales, and then started working as a manager for all the students, teaching them sales and design. So yeah,
so
did what I did.
When Broc was a student, Broc was the first student that I ever hired. So I graduated college, and then I was working at the little print shop, and just learning the ropes. And literally, Broc came up, put in an order, and Mike, who works with us now, said, "Hey, this kid knows stuff." And I was like, "All right." And Broc just kept coming back. So to brag about Broc, but can't do that because it'll get to his head. Broc launched our student program without knowing it. Started bringing his friends. That turned into campuses, and that's how we spread all across the country. When Broc was in school, I think he did, $250,000 in sales.
Yeah, a little bit more, give or take.
$250,000 in sales in college. Learning design in all his off hours as the most popular person on campus, teaching other students design. And when we really, after COVID, we were kind of resetting the business, we started texting, and next thing you know, really, Broc, you launched a Chicago office. So one of the first hires back in Chicago, and has been with us ever since, manages hundreds of students across the country. And really, there isn't anything. I always tell people, if there's a couple people in the world that know how I'm going to think or respond, Broc is one of them. He'll take words out of my mouth for me. But Broc's been around the block here, and he's done it all. And he might have the best stories too, Sean.
No, I've been very much looking forward to this conversation because I've only known Broc since about March, and I've come to very much enjoy working with him. But I need to know what he was like when you first came across him, Steven, because I know there's some amazing stories out there. But what do you remember from Broc when he first walked through the door, Steven?
Well, he was. I know you were wearing those duck boots. What do you call those?
The bean boots.
Bean boots. LL Bean boots as a freshman. Was always wearing a vest with a button down, khakis, and
in Sperry's
he knew
too.
In Sperry's, he knew everyone. I think the funny story that I have. So I was like, Broc was slinging shirts, and this is before Venmo, so he'd have to bring me money in cash in envelopes. I'd tip around with it. So he asked me. He goes, "Can I want to have my birthday bar crawl?" And I said, "Yeah, sure. You can have your birthday bar crawl." So he came up to me and said, "I want to have a birthday bar crawl. Can I print some shirts?" Well, no problem. How many shirts do you think, this kid in college is going to need? Well, 150 shirts later, the Broc birthday bar crawl was one of the biggest events on campus. And that's where I knew we had an extremely special and loved individual. And you came up and printed them, Broc. But
yeah,
Broc was with me literally when there were only a couple of us there, answering phones, putting names on the back of shirts, placing orders, deliveries, you name it. And so we put an ad in one of the early newspapers. It's called The Odyssey. Yeah. And it said, "We're taking over." The picture of Broc on there, and there were so many typos on this.
So
I
many
still
typos.
keep it to this day. I don't think we got
That's all you need, a picture of Broc saying you're taking over, and you know it's going to happen.
But when I would tell Broc, when I gave Broc a challenge in college, like, Broc, we need to figure out a way to get to every sorority. And he goes, perfect. We'll just go deliver them all, fanny packs. And so he would come, package them all up, drop off cookie cakes, fanny packs, built relationships, old school relationships. And, when people needed shirts, you just said, well, we're just going to go with Broc. And a lot of what we've been built on, the relationships, come from a lot of that groundwork. Broc, what's your favorite memory?
Oh, man. I would have to say when we finally got we had some girls in fraternities. We had a bunch of guys too. I think is when we had the first bucket night, I want to say. And it was kind of just all of us kind of taking over. We were like, whatever other companies out there, we're going to do it better. We're going to get every fraternity, every sorority. And there was 7 of us, as a squad, and we did every single thing together. We went to Canada. I think that hands down is probably my favorite time. We all went to Canada for our first sales retreat, and we all went there and had no expectations, but we each gave different presentations on how to build better relationships. But it was just the fact that we were so young going to Canada. We all dressed up in the same outfit, and Steven wore all black. And it just was so funny. If you look at the picture, every guy has a blue button down on, all the girls had black dresses. But it was just then when we were like, whoa, this is going to be crazy. And we were like, we got to keep hiring. We got to keep hiring. And then boom, now it's 200 kids.
That relationship building for sure has paid off dividends, because even now, every time we come back from a weekend, I'm like, what's up? How's everybody's weekend? What'd you do, Broc? You're like, oh, I was at this place and it was crazy. I ran into this guy from 3 years ago. And oh yeah, I actually saw one of our athletes who hit me up here. And there's not a single time you go anywhere in the city that you don't run into somebody you know.
Yeah, my friends don't like that. We can't just go out. It's got to be, oh, hey. So, yeah.
Broc, you're obviously an incredible salesperson, but you're also an artist. Mm-hmm. Tell us about your journey as an artist, and talking to the mic so we can hear your voice.
Yeah, so arts kind of started for me in 7th grade. I kind of just got into an art class and then kept going from there. I was a part of Marwin, which is actually in Chicago, right on this street, a little bit further down. And then I went to Little Black Pearl, where Hebrew Brantley was my design teacher at the time, which is a big Chicago artist. So I kind of fell in love with art fast, but I was always told you're not going to make a lot of money doing it or do anything with art. So I was like, all right, well, I'll try to do the sports thing. So play water polo for quite some time. And then art kind of just started picking up because I started making t-shirts, and then t-shirts turned into someone asking me for a logo. Logo turned into website turned into full branding. Branding turned into geo filters that turned back into logos. And then I kind of started Broc Anthony Designs kind of as a freelance. And then now just do a bunch of different branding, do work with different artists, DJs, and new brands that are starting. So it's kind of been branding people for a while. Mm-hmm.
When you started early on, Broc, how much was it, I really, really enjoy doing this, and how much was it, this is easy money?
I think that it was honestly in college when I first started getting asked to make someone's logo, where I was like, oh, wait, are you sure? Are you? And then my artwork from freshman year versus now is just completely night and day. But it started off and I made someone's logo, and then of course I changed the logo years later. But I kind of fell in love with art young. Just I've always been a creative person. Just my sister was a model, so she's kind of in the creative world. My twin sister is complete opposite of me, but she still likes being creative. And then my mom is kind of artsy as well, so interior design, all that. So it kind of sparked it with me. So kind of young.
I think what's interesting is you proved out a concept for us. Mm-hmm. And, as we brainstormed, we said, why can't we pay college students to design and sell apparel? Mm-hmm. And I remember, Adam, we were at Print Hustlers and people would be like, what do you mean you have students doing this? Right? Mm-hmm. Like, what? Do you have Adobe Illustrator? And I'm like, yeah, look right there. And when they heard the numbers, they're like, wait, really? And so really, like, a lot of when we talk about working with, at Campus Inc., we work with students. Some of them happen to be athletes. It really started as you also like slinging and making money. What was that money like in college for you? I don't know how we tracked it.
Man, I have my old commission tracker, and I don't even know what the percentage was then, but just wrote what my total sales was. But it was great because I never had to ask my parents for money. So it worked out. My mom was like, I normally would split a Christmas gift for each other, like with the siblings, but I like bought my mom a gift once and she was like, what? Where are you getting this money from? Like, what is going on? I'm like, I'm selling t-shirts. She's like, all right, okay. Like, this doesn't make any sense. Came down for mom's weekend. And then she was sitting there like running around all the different locations and events, taking pictures like, oh my God, my son made that. So I think she realized like, oh, okay, you actually are selling shirts and nothing else. But yeah, it was just, I was like, yeah, Steve, I got a job. And she's like, you don't need to be doing that. Like, you don't need another job on campus. So kind of worked out though. So
Broc is now creative director for our athletes, and it's a special role as you've grown into it, and it's super deserving of it.
It's honestly been a game changer too. When we talk about
change everything.
Yeah. How we, to your point, Stephen, wanting to work with students to teach them design and sales, just happens to be that some of the students that we work with are athletes. The amount of times that Broc can come in and have that conversation around not just the creative side, but also like, look, this is how much momentum this can get across your campus. I've seen it happen. I've done it myself. Mm-hmm. It's really cool. Not just, again, from the creative side, but also from that education side of, hey, this is how it will work. This is how we can move as much merch as possible. That experience has been awesome. What's it like talking to athletes for you, Broc?
I think the coolest part about it so far has been kind of building their story and figuring out who they are besides like playing a sport. We have a questionnaire that they fill out, and I thought that was super important because there's certain different things that even when I'm doing branding on a freelance basis, that there's certain different keywords or certain different ways or aesthetics that you want art to be, or some story that you're trying to tell. And with that questionnaire, we kind of get a deeper dive into even like, what does your tattoos mean? It's such a huge thing because there was some reason that they got this piece of artwork on their body for the rest of their lives. So trying to build that story out for them has been the coolest part. So really kind of get into the personal version of these athletes. It's been the coolest part.
Broc, how is that different? I mean, you were slinging for the sororities and the fraternities, right? Designing for them who are just, super picky and how is it different when you transition from designing for, frats and sororities to designing for athletes? Like, what do you think? Harder, easier? What have the challenges been?
I think that trying to portray, because we don't really know who their fans are. We don't know who's really going to buy. And on the student side, I'm pushing my students to, if they say there's going to be 50 shirts ordered, I'm having them think in their brain like, oh, it's actually going to be 25. So you got to see who's going to be wearing this merch, who's going to be rocking it. Like, do you think someone's actually going to be spending this amount of money on it? Is it priced well? That's kind of just the only thing that's been a little bit different is, fraternities, they have these set different dates, but when we're coming on to NIL, we're building out a storyline every single time. So it's not just putting your face on something. It's like, what's your favorite slogan? What's been special to you? What do you want to build out? Like Sydney Stevens is a great example of that. She didn't really want her face everywhere. She wanted to build something that was special for her, that's long lasting. So that is kind of like building the brand with Campus Inc. is a part of that. And every time she texts me, it's like so fun because she's like this long drawn out thing, but she knows what she wants. But I'll come back in and kind of do the creative like audit of it. And then we come up with something. So the collaboration part is, again, like my favorite part of it.
Yeah, one of the most, I would say, difficult parts, but can also be rewarding, is building that relationship with the athlete. And you have to be super patient. Every athlete works at different speeds.
Yeah.
They all
different times of the day.
Different times of the day. Some early in the morning, a lot at night, a lot on Sundays, right? When you're sinking into the couch for your last few hours of the weekend.
Yeah.
And Broc does a really, really good job of maintaining that relationship with the athletes, because ultimately we all recognize they're extremely important to what we do. They're going to spread the word about the good things that we're doing to their teammates. I don't know, Broc, how is that for you in terms of building that relationship with them? Has it been smooth, or are there times where you're like, oh man, why are you texting me right now?
No, I'm a night owl. I'm morning owl. I don't really know. It's never been like an issue for me. I don't really care. It's like another text message on my phone, to be honest with you. So I think that I'll get back to you or come up with concepts or kind of just really figure out what they want to do with their first couple of drops or launches or what's important to them, and then kind of building that relationship, because I'm really a big person into like people buy from people. Like I tell my students that, like, don't just go in there with a sale, like figure out what their why is and how you can solve it. So I think design is definitely a problem solution type of situation. So even the problem of we're trying to get merch out for a specific time zone or time drop, so we need to plan a little bit differently. But what do you think is going to hit your fans a lot more, or your supporters? And on the student side, I'm kind of telling them like, hey, what do they need done? They need something done for their fraternity or sorority, or maybe they don't know exactly what they need. So that's why I show them an athlete guide before that kind of helps with inspiration and show what we've done for other players or what we possibly can do. So that's kind of how I feel about the text messaging, you know.
Broc, you talked a little bit about like uncertainty. Like you don't know how many shirts they're going to sell.
No, you don't.
How, and so there's a big risk that we take when we work with an athlete, because a lot of times we'll get parents that send us designs. If you're an NIL athlete, don't let your parents design your merch. Oh boy. Yeah.
We love you very much.
We love you, Mom and Dad. We promise to get you a free shirt.
But
yes,
please let us do the designs.
We've been doing this for a long time for a reason.
Yeah. Okay. So we talk a lot about guaranteed success. How do you guarantee? Because if you put something out there and no one buys it, the athlete's going to be like, what the heck? You're not going to make the athlete any money. You're going to be like, why did we even waste our time with that? Right? Creative ain't free. How do you figure that out?
So I think that now I really do. Like, I'm not in a rush to launch the merch right away. I would rather figure out, what do you think that we can build out, like something with your nickname or something with a tattoo or something with a slogan. I think those are more important, and something that someone's going to wear every single day and not just for your events, I think is another thing. So inspirational quotes on the back, or something that's special to you, or maybe you have a dog like we did for Jake Grandison. We did that Pluto one. So and then even with Corbello, his girlfriend drew one. And so those different storylines are kind of special for people. And even if the first drop doesn't do good or the second drop, we keep like playing with different things that find something that's special. So like T-Mac, I know he loves comics and things like that, and I saw that in his questionnaire. And so I was walking with Sean once down the street, and I like turned around and I was like, oh wait, that we got to do that for T-Mac. And he's like, what? I was like, just give me a couple of days. Just give me a couple of days. And then I came back and he's like, what? So I sent it to T-Mac and he was like, absolutely. No problem. So, you read those questionnaires, you figure out their why or what's kind of like their personality, and then you keep going from there. Like the next one definitely won't be a comic, but we can kind of keep playing with that in different ways.
How do you deal with them if what they have in their head, you look at it and you're like, I don't think that's going to
I will typically send something else that I'm like, what if we combine this with your idea and this, or refine it? And typically they don't really have like the most creative bone in their body, but they will like kind of work together. And people don't, I'll show them something and then they're like, oh, wait, like, how about we just change the words for that? Because I feel like you got to show somebody some inspiration because they're not really thinking about that. So I tend to go to Pinterest or use a freelance artist, or honestly just kind of go on Instagram and stalk a couple different clothing brands that I think, it's so random where I kind of get inspiration from, but definitely the old school days and how those shirts were when we were younger, that we always had the oversized vintage ones, and just with different creative abilities, illustrations of yourself versus just doing like retro streetwear and things like that. So I think playing with different styles, playing with different trends that are important right now, and just honestly just playing with the athlete at hand, it's different. Every time I'm thinking about something, I can be doing something for one designer and I'll pull up another tab and be like, wait, I got to add this to that. So it's kind of weird.
I was so grateful to have you, kind of not just help, but oversee a lot of this creative process, because that was one of my most daunting things when I came on board. Was like, oh, geez, I got to come up with cool things for these athletes. Like, they're in trouble if I'm responsible for it. So, it's been a big learning curve for me just watching you work. And a big thing that I've learned from you and Stephen both is always asking the question, like, who's going to wear it, right? Like, we don't just want to put something out there and be like, oh, it's a shirt, it exists, so it's going to sell, which there are some people that do that. Just throw something on a shirt, it'll sell. But both of your approach is really like, okay, who's going to wear this and how do we make sure that it speaks to them? So, it's a pretty big creative lift. That's a pretty big process. Do you do all this yourself? Are you working solo? How does that process work when you're answering those hard questions?
So we have a couple of freelance designers that we use. We've used like Quasi before, and like he has a specific style, but how it kind of is I get inspiration from everywhere, but I also do kind of collaborate with the team, or I'll text a student like, what do you think? Like, what do you think about this? So I kind of include them a lot. Carter Crane, Grace Reisinger. I kind of ask them a lot of questions, and I'll send stuff to Steven at like 1 o'clock in the morning. Like, what about this? And he's like, he's like, what are you doing up? Like, I'm like, this would be perfect for this player. And then he's like, well, what if we did it for this person? So it's different every single day. I don't know. There's not like a complete strategy around it. I kind of go back and forth in conversation. And even like the first time I send something to the athlete, like they don't always say yes. And so kind of gets me back to the drawing board, but I'm never like defeated. I'm like, if we don't like it now, we can use it for another time. It's not that big of a deal. And I tell them that too, like, say no, please say you don't like this, because if not, then I'm like, oh, this is what you want. This is who you are. So, yeah.
And I think to your point, Broc, like, you're an amazing artist, and you can draw things, you can design, you can do that, but you are also a hunter and gatherer of really good artists. Yeah, and you know how to bring people together and be like, hey, do you want to work on this with me? If there's a specific style on Instagram, you'll be like, whoa, that's a really cool piece of art. Why don't we highlight that artist? Like, Kwasi in Chicago helped us out a bunch, and that just helps the whole ecosystem out, right? And I think something that you don't know if you do or not is you're not about taking credit and saying I designed it. I feel like it's more I assembled this whole thing, and if it sells 1 billion pieces, that's the best feeling in the world. That's
the best feeling. I mean, it doesn't have to all come from me. It's more so the direction. And I also given those other artists opportunities to kind of build their portfolio, because when I grew up, it was always kind of like getting blessed with opportunities for different art, and even just like seeing my designs on like billboards or seeing them on t-shirts. I still to this day see shirts that I've made in college, or just like a random jersey that I've made on the street. And I'm like, oh, I made that. Or my friends are walking around like, oh man, Broc made that, so it's super cool to see, but I'm not like I think there's student designers that I love. They have specific styles, and I love being able to incorporate them and build their portfolio at the end of the day.
How we've got in excess of 500 athletes on the platform. We're scaling out like crazy. That curation and that collaboration, I think is unbelievable in terms of what the athletes are getting in terms of creative, right, from us. How do you execute that at scale? Like, we're talking about doing custom and core stuff for, approaching 600 people.
And jerseys and cartoons.
Yeah.
And limited drops.
Notion. if I didn't have Notion, I kind of have like a Broc's dashboard that's private, and I kind of split out every single one of our tasks from urban champs, from student designer to athletes, and just kind of like do my checklist every single morning. I kind of write out a list that needs to get done before 11. And then once I do, I don't really speak to humans until I get that done. And then after, like everybody from the other side of the office, like, oh, are you done with your work or your 11 a.m. work? So it's been a process for me to kind of start getting more organized and kind of start having due dates and timelines and knowing what I need for everything like that. And also GraphX has been very helpful for that, because I get to kind of just like put all my ideas, like I'll mood board everything on like an Illustrator file and then send it off to them, and very descriptive, like, please change this, please make this, please use inspiration from this, and this. So GraphX is the GOAT. They have helped quite a few. And even Pantones, I have been driving myself crazy for nights and nights and nights trying to match college, university Pantones to sublimation. And I had to like email Rob once at GraphX and Nick as well, and just like, hey, I need help.
Rob's the Pantone whiz. I remember we were out at I can't remember, some pizza place some night.
Paradise Park.
Paradise Park, yeah. And Rob's looking around the room. We're like, what Pantone color is that pink neon sign? And he just rattles off the Pantone. You're like losing your mind looking them up. He's like maybe one or two Pantones off, if not perfect.
So to give a little bit of background, Campus Ink is backed by a partner called GraphX, and they're an art service, and they have basically an elastic team that is able to help us when we get super busy. And that's how we scale, right? And so, a lot of it could be Broc working on all the creative, getting everything together. We send it off to them, and within 24 hours, it comes back ready, curated, mocked up. We can get it out to the athletes. That's the same kind of service that bigger companies like Fanatics and all those companies do. And I think when Adam and I are pitching to investors, and they're like, how do you do all the art? And it's like, it's because this is in our blood. We know how to move art very, very quickly, but we also know how to move art that looks good because it's got to be on a t-shirt. We're not making cover photos.
Yeah. Doing a photo for a website or, that's very different than something that's print ready to be on merchandise. And you talked about Pantones too. That was another really important piece, Broc, that I've just been really impressed by you, because when we're doing this co-licensed merchandise, you have to get the colors
right.
You say Pantone perfect, right? It has to be perfect, and so it's great to be able to have partners like that can work at scale.
I have reached out to one of our old student designer, Elena Schneider. She works in kind of automotive business when it comes to coloring, and Amy Monks. And I'm like, I'm freaking out about these Pantones. I need you to help me. I need to convert these. And so when we got our first samples in the other day and the colors were right, I'm like, okay, I can breathe. I can do this now, because you're just waiting for weeks and weeks and weeks. And then they came in. I was like, oh, I don't even want to see them. They're totally wrong. And then they were right. So.
And I think, to your point, just because it looks good on a computer doesn't mean it looks good in person. And I give a lot of that credit. You're teaching this to Sean and Adam. You've lived in the print shop. You know what a bucket of Pantone ink looks like. You know what National Red looks like. You know what maroon looks like, and you know the difference between crimson and red. Right? We don't want to mess that up. And so I think that's something we put in our craft is, when we get the license of a university, we take that really seriously. And we want to make sure that when we print, it's actually going to look awesome. And I think that starts in really good art. I guess, Broc, what has been your favorite design to work on for the athletes so far?
Oh, I would either have to say I have this crazy one that I haven't even shown you guys yet for DeJuan Jones. It's I turned him into Thor. It's him in the football outfit, but his hand is like a Thor, and it's in the Ohio State colors. But I would have to say also Weatherman with Sky Clark was a cool one. He came and was like, I want to be a superhero. And I'm like, oh man, let's go. And so, but then I also loved the simplicity of T-Mac's design of just the one in front of the top. And it was built out Texas made. Every week I have a new favorite design. So, or every other day.
That's how you know you you got a guy who loves his craft. He's like, I don't know. What week is it? What's my favorite?
I don't know which one. I loved.
But I think the part that you said there is sometimes the simplest stuff is the best. Like Sydney Stevens, it was all about placement, right? Like, how do I just get really good placement of the logos rather than trying to go crazy?
And then even just personalizations. One time I took one of the athletes that we were working with, I took a screenshot of her story and she drew this heart. And I screenshotted it and took it to Illustrator and brought it in and put it on the apparel and then told her. And she's like, what? And I'm like, yeah, you posted this 3 days ago, screenshotted it, but I wanted to make it a part of her piece because then it becomes more of a personal thing or their signature or things like that. So adding those little things, even when we did Danger's birthday drop, having specific highlights on Hyde Park, where he was from, or something about the school or nicknames or anything that he's called, we kind of put that all into one. And it was rather simple, but it still was graphically pleasing. So
I mean, I love what you said there of just kind of taking stuff from the athletes and their stories. That particular athlete was Nia Dennis. Is that right?
Is Nia Dennis.
Former UCLA. Former UCLA gymnast. I think one thing that I've watched you kind of really lean into is, and I've seen it help your art too, is just kind of being a genuine fan of all these athletes that we work with. I'm going to tee you up here a little bit. I want you to talk a little bit about just how you feel about college softball.
Oh my God. I watch college softball so much and college baseball. My buddies used to be on the University of Illinois baseball team and I'm best friends with them. And every time they come over, they're like, what are you doing watching baseball and softball all the time? And I sending all of the team pictures and stuff. And I'm just amazed or swimming or honestly anything at this point. I'm just always watching the sports or when they have a game, I'm looking at their Instagram. So I love it. And I kind of get inspiration from there. There's certain different things. Maybe there's a pose that they do, or maybe there's something. So you kind of have to be that person for a little bit or try to be and fit in their shoes for a little bit to be able to design for them, to kind of understand who they are, what they like, nicknames, just certain smirks or expressions that they do. So, yeah.
During softball playoffs, was it?
Yeah, it was World Series.
Season, we would get text messages. And it was exclamation points. And I'm like, what happened? She's like, Keely just struck out another one. I'm like, what are you? Oh, our athletes are on TV.
Yeah, it's a triple. It's a triple. What? Oh, Broc's watching softball again.
What are you talking about? But even in the draft, we were listening to Kofi, and really, I think putting yourself in their shoes, Sean. This is a big part of what you do. And what our plans are when we build out these school solutions. What is your goal? Because that is so special that we're able to support the athletes. I remember you literally when Ashley Prangy was playing, you were posting about her. Tell us about your plans to do that and how you're going to figure out. And tell us a little bit about that. I know about
first
Broc,
of all, I just want to say I'm very nervous for Broc's well-being as he's rooting for literally every athlete in the country here in a couple months and watching every bit of sports programming that's on TV because we're going to have an athlete playing at all hours of the day, sometimes against each other. Then it's going to be very scary. So Broc, I'm a little nervous for you, but also excited. No, but I think one of the things that I know is really, really important is we want to find organic ways to be able to push our athletes' collections. And so one of those ways is to literally just piggyback on official school Twitter accounts. If they're tweeting something, I want to be right in their replies right away, have that first reply 30 seconds later saying, hey, if, say, it's Keely Rochard for Virginia Tech just had a strikeout to strike out the side, ends the inning, whatever, makes a big play, I want to be right there in the reply saying, amazing job, Keely, support her here. So that fans who are on Virginia Tech softball's Twitter, this is their direct market of people that would be supporting her. They're going to see that in the replies and hopefully click it. And maybe they don't purchase it there, but hey, they're at least aware. Ooh, I didn't realize she was there. Oh, wait. Keely's teammate, Kelsey's there, and they also have Meredith, and they also have Mackenzie, and they have all these other players. Oh my gosh, this is incredible. Wait a minute, they also have Virginia Tech football. wait, they also have Virginia Tech soccer. And it just kind of builds from there. So that's going to be a major part of our strategy. And no different than Broc taking in every piece of sports programming. We're going to need kids on college campuses who are kind of curating these social accounts and really taking advantage of those opportunities, because as much as I love sports, I don't know that now that I'm married, I'm going to be able to do that at all hours of the day. So
Sean and I are neighbors, so maybe we can
watch parties.
Hanging on the wall at each other.
Yeah. Swimming and diving is on.
Yeah, maybe our wives can hang out.
Well, and the other piece of that too is like, you know, what you were talking about with Keely, what you're talking about with Kofi, and Broc's just, you know, capacity and ability and vision for wanting to build that broader brand is, you know, it goes way beyond college too. That's the really exciting thing is, you know, you can sell your merch while you're in college, but you can sell your merch at the next level. You can sell your merch, you know, until you die. And so building that brand that you've talked about already, Broc, that speaks to who you are as a person, doesn't just stop to who you are as an athlete in this stage right now, is a really neat thing, because you can leverage that, and you can use that to kind of have some influence and talk about who you are.
Your business, I just feel like your name is. And so even you're in college right now, like there's only so long you can wear the jersey. And so after, it's kind of really building out, like, what do you want to like do with the world? Like, what do you want to do? Is it an impact? Are you big into mental health? Are you working with another organization that does something that is community service around? Just multiple things that build out your brand in past sports. Like, we can always do stuff that's sports specific, but tell your story. This is the opportunity to do it while you guys are in college. So student athletes that are working with us, like, this is the time to kind of deep dive into yourself and like, what do you want to portray? What do you think your fans are going to want to wear? But also just like, what storyline are you wanting to tell?
And I think part of our why, right, and what we're doing, we're playing a very long game here. A lot of like, you know, people will be like, how do you plan to sell on campuses across the country? And it's like, we're going to immerse ourselves into the lives, you know, and understand what these players do. And that is the only way. There's no amount of ads we can pay for. You know, this is all organic. And that's the best type of marketing. I guess, Sean, do you want to break to everyone who runs our Illini Instagram?
Well, I sort of know who he is, but honestly, you're the one that found him, Steven. I know he's younger. I guess he's, I don't know, about 18 years old.
17.
But he just loves Illinois. 17 years old. And he is obsessed with Illinois sports.
Mr.
Which honestly
Illini
is
country.
kind of, runs Illini country. Steven came across him, and it's honestly what you're looking for in these social accounts. We see them as sports communities first and a store second. The more people that are invested and rooting for the team and following these accounts for that aggregation of sports news, the more they might be interested in buying and supporting our athletes. But it's pretty cool.
Yeah. So we have a 17-year-old running the Illini Store Instagram.
Killing
it.
He's
crushing it. He's crushing it.
Doing a great job.
What's funny
loves basketball.
We got to get him on other sports. Mike, if you're listening to this, maybe we'll bring him on here. That's actually what ESPN did with Omar from House of Highlights.
Yep.
Really good organic stuff, really passionate people. We turn them into blogs, other content, and it turns into it's an entertaining play, and his takes are really good for a 17-year-old.
Yeah.
I think the funniest part, people are like, when he does Q&A on his Illini country, they're like, are you going to go to Illinois? He's like, I can't even apply yet. I'm like, if that kid does not get in. But that's really the goal is as we're running all of these and we're building them out at Indiana, Sean's tapping into the Indiana community to find, people to help and students. Broc, could you talk a little bit about long-term and what your vision is for, students working with athletes? Because we're starting to roll that out a little bit. We did it with Grace and Carter this summer. What does that look like?
I think it's going to kind of be working, like our top salespeople or the ones that we know communicate the best, kind of building it out where they can kind of handle the drop and they can finally start to enhance their creative portfolio and things like that. So I think that's going to be like in a group chat with me or kind of for a couple of times and kind of going through a normal order, just like you would do a normal t-shirt for a fraternity and sorority. There's no difference. You just have to have a little bit of structure. Like, hey, these are a couple different things. Or, I did it with Grace and Carter just to see how it would work. Like, hey, this is what this athlete wants. Can you make this? And then they do it and then send it. And I'm like, now you can put this in your portfolio. And they're like, oh, wait, I didn't even think about that, And it's, that part where they're always going to be able to think like, okay, I made this athlete's artwork back in 2000, whatever, and they can say that forever. And I think that's the coolest part for me, is kind of mixing that too, of certain students work with athletes on that campus or athletes anywhere and just start becoming a designer,
I think it's, you said that, Broc, like sharing that feeling. We share this with students. The feeling you get when you design your first shirt and you see it out. Your stomach drops. You're like, that's my shirt. I still do it. My wife always
started
like,
art in the wild. I started art in the wild highlight.
But art in the wild. Yeah. There could be pictures of me and Broc pointing people out on Lakeshore Drive, but the greatest feeling is passing that to someone else and letting them feel it, right? Having another student feel that, having an athlete say, wow, I got to work on this. I got to be a part of this. And that's really our long-term goal, is how do we collide what we've done in our student designer program with what we're doing with our athletes and create this synergy where on those campuses you have amazing artists, amazing kids in media, and amazing athletes. And that is professional development. I don't know how better to say it. Adam wants to turn this into a 3-hour course that they get credit for someday. Yeah. But that is the collision of atoms that we're trying to really make. And that's why when we hear about other people doing NIL and in the merch world, we're like, okay,
kill it.
Doesn't really bother us because this is much different. Sean, what were you going to say?
No, I just have one kind of more larger retrospective question. I'm very much a student still of Campus Inc. Very new. Adam is new with the company, been around a little bit longer. But Broc, you've been with this company for so long. I'm just curious to hear your thoughts on seeing how far the company has come over the years, how much pride you take in it, and I know you're somebody that likes to move 100 miles an hour, but when you take a step back to see where the company's come from and where it's going, how much pride do you take in that?
I mean, I've literally been here since I was a kid. To me, I've been in different roles and put into different opportunities and just continue to grow. And I think nowadays is kind of being that person for the students has been everything. So like teaching them, like I love when they bother me on a weekend and I'm like, hey, I'm trying to learn this design. Because I was once there and I didn't like really have, I had Steven teaching me artwork, or like learning on YouTube, but it's really just kind of being that inspiration for them that they can do something a little bit more, even if they're not a design major. I don't even think that's like a thing. And that's what the student designer position is. It's like, you don't have to be a student. I mean, you don't have to be a design major. We have nurses that kill it, like on the sales front and design front. So seeing them even just do a simple left chest and I'll do the rest of the artwork for you. It's just their piece of artwork and their start of their career. And then kind of just pushing them and kind of being like, it's okay. You can do this. You have this art. You are a good artist. Like that re-encouragement for them is a huge thing. And even just a student athlete, like you are part of that process as well, that creative process. So taking a step back, I'm like, wow, we've like really done it. And we're like inspiring a student, even when they say they got their first job, like getting those thank you text messages from my graduates from last year. It's just like, wow, you guys are going into the real world. You are using what you've learned from Campus Inc. And even if you guys want to still close orders, they still hit me up. So I think that's the coolest part, is just seeing them develop from like, we're seeing them develop since like freshman year and then go all the way up and graduate. It's kind of like it very inspirational for me. It's my why.
What was your reaction when Steven called you and told you that Mark Cuban was going to be a part of Campus Inc?
I'm almost 90% positive. I was at a bar and I left. I was like, I was like, you guys, I was like, I have to go for a second. And I was like, what is going on? And I texted him like, what are you talking about? Like, what is going on? And then he was like, no, it's for real. And I'm like, oh man, this is crazy. And I kind of had a moment like on my balcony and I was like, wow, this is kind of happening. This is not just sell a t-shirt to a student, get wads of cash and bring them into the office, right. But Yeah.
Mark will be happy with that.
Yeah,
he wants a cash.
Yeah, I thought it was the craziest thing, but we are blessed with the opportunity and we are just grinding it out. You know, I've immersed myself into this grind and can't really get out of it. So yeah.
Broc is truly first one in, last one out. I got a final question for you, Broc.
What's up?
You have these creative conversations with athletes all the time. For any that are listening, what's your best piece of advice in terms of working with, Campus Inc., making sure that they're able to get out of this process what they need to?
Think about who's going to wear the shirt. Think about what storyline that you are trying to portray, what your why is, and even if you want to go on the athletic route or if you want to continue to do something else after, start to think about your brand and your name as a business outside of sports is the biggest thing that I want to tell athletes. So
this is good. This is good. This is like our text channel. Just we'll have to do this more often. 4K, just a good riff. Yeah. Well, this has been an awesome episode. I'm sure people listening would it's just a testament to Broc being the backbone of Campus Inc. And as we grow and continue to scale, you heard him talk about what our why is and why that's so important to us. And these are our insides and how we operate. So hopefully everyone enjoyed listening to the behind the scenes of how Broc Anthony does it. You guys have anything else?
That's it.
Sweet.
That's it.
This is another episode of the NIL show. We got Adam, Sean, Broc, myself, Steven. Talk to you later.